Hey folks, it's your pal Mike Shea from SlyFlourish.com, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy DM Prep. This is a weekly show broadcast live on Twitch at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, in which I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday D&D game. In this case, I am preparing for the final session of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. You can help back shows like this and the Sly Flourish website on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/SlyFlourish, you too can help support the show. It helps pay for all of the things that I need in order to do this show and all the YouTube videos and keep the website up and running and a whole bunch of other back-end odds and ends and bits of administration that I need in order to keep everything going. All the folks at Patreon help fund that, and you can help fund it too. To stick on to the Patreon topic for a minute, Patreon backers are now going to get access to an exclusive Sly Flourish adventure called Regnum Ratus, The Rats in the Cellar. I'm showing it. I think I'm showing it over on the left. Yes. So this is a adventure that I put together probably over the last, I don't know, maybe as far back as 6 months I've been working on this. It's been a little side project. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. And I thought, this would be a nice thing to put together and give to the Patreon backers. So it is a 10-page adventure. It has internal artwork, and it's been through design, and I play tested it once myself. So not quite as, not to downgrade my own stuff, not quite as polished as you might find in a book like Runes of the Grendleroot, but a fun adventure nonetheless. It is a first-level adventure that can take characters to level 5, in which you go down into the cellars beneath the inn, the Gentle Willow Inn, and help uncover the horrors within. So it's got your NPCs. If you're familiar with the styles of Runes of the Grendleroot, it is a similar style. Summaries, it talks about how to run your first session, because it's intended that you make this this is the first session of an adventure. It's got quests, it's got milestones, it's got notable NPCs, secrets and clues, as you can imagine in a start, and a beautiful map. This is by Daniel Walthall, who goes by Axebane on Twitter, put together the map for this. So you can see how awesome everything is underneath the cellar. So it is a adventure that is actually tuned around up to, you can do it with one player and one DM, so similar to the style that you find in the D&D Essentials kit. And it's short adventures. The intent here is that you get through various quests in an hour or so. So all kinds of neat things, including random encounters and random locations that you might find deep underneath. So yes, if you would like to get access to this adventure, you can do so by subscribing to Sly Flourish on Patreon. All backers on Patreon for Sly Flourish get access to this. And I'm going to be cleaning it up too. I'm still working on it. So I think this is a solid enough version to release, or I wouldn't have released it. But I have some ideas about things we want to do in the future with it. So it's going to be tuned and cleaned up, and maybe the design worked on a little bit. It's still going to stay black and white because I wanted it to be easily printable, printed out easily, so that you could grab it, throw it in your kit, and go and run it. And if you want to run a quick D&D game, this is a quick one to run. So I really like it. I'm very excited about it, and I'm happy to give it to the fine backers of Patreon who help fund and support Sly Flourish in all their other ways. So that is that. So last week, ignore my little notes here. I was like, what notes should I take and speak at the thing? So last week, is nice the right word? Yes, it is nice. It is a nice adventure. It is gory and disgusting and nice. Last week, I ran a different game at my game shop, so we did not run my Ghosts of Saltmarsh game. I actually only had 2 players, and we were testing a future Sly Flourish product that is not the Rats in the Cellar or Runes of the Grendleroot or Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It is testing something else. And I knew I was going to have a bunch of people out, so I knew I didn't want to finish Ghosts of Saltmarsh then. So today, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if anybody's going to be missing, but today is the final conclusion of our Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign. It's the final session of Tamarot's Fate and the final conclusion of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And so last week, I didn't talk about what happened. So in the previous week, the characters began on the island of the monolith. So if you are familiar with the adventure Tamarot's Fate, you will not be familiar with how I'm running it, because the way I'm running it is very different than everything else, than the adventure itself. So in my version of the adventure, it's really a bunch of stages that I'll summarize real quickly. One, they sail out of Saltmarsh and head towards the Isle of the Monolith, where they know the rift of the Endless Nadir is opening and getting wider and threatening to swallow the world. So they sail on their ship through strange, twisted seas. As they look up into the sky, they see that the stars themselves are changing, that they are on the border between worlds. They arrive, as they get there, they get attacked by the Tomarat, a ghost pirate ship commanded by Sea Prince Sergal, an undead pirate captain who is the scourge of the sea for decades, and was the scourge of the sea for decades. Him and his pirate crew attack the characters. At the same time, they are attacked by the avatar of Tharizdun, in this case, in the Sunday game, a giant black whale known as the Black Death. That is a warlock whale able to cast spells like giant tentacle spells and things like that. And so the characters fought the black whale and defeated it. And then they went to the Isle of the Monolith, which sits above the Endless Nadir. Deep beneath the Isle is a former abolithic city called the Endless Nadir, now called the Endless Nadir. And in the center of that city is a growing rift to the realm of Tharizdun, the prison realm of Tharizdun. The Tharizdun. I get yelled at all the time. I get yelled at for like 2 hours on the show the other day about Tharizdun. So sorry to everybody who's insulted by my pronunciation of Tharizdun. So Tharizdun, there's a prison realm to Tharizdun. Oh, I got a cat that wants all sorts of attention right now. Stop it. Ow. Go away. She wants attention and then she jumps up and claws me. So I'm just going to ignore her. So, in the abolithic city beneath the Isle is a great rift to the realm of Tharizdun. And the characters found out that the monolith that's sitting on the Isle above, which stands about 50 feet high, it's a giant black obsidian monolith, is actually an anchor. And there is a chain going from that monolith down through the rift of the Endless Nadir into the realm of Tharizdun to another monolith that exists on that side, almost like a mirror. And the characters need to destroy both monoliths in order to separate the two worlds, close the rift, and save Earth from the destruction of from colliding with Tharizdun's realm and probably releasing Tharizdun in the problem. So the characters started off inside of a hollowed out volcanic growth of volcanic spire on the upper island. And they talked to an old sage who then turned into a Far Realm seer and beat the crap out of him. Far Realm seers are really badass, so be careful when you're running your seers. They're rough. They then stole the seer's apparatus of Qualish, which is like a little miniature submarine, and they went down deep into the realm below. And there they faced a scion of Tharizdun. And the Scion of Tharizdun is a reskinned larva mage. So if we go to D&D Beyond, bang. I go to Larva Mage, Starspawn Larva Mage. Starspawn Larva Mages are CR 16. They're very powerful. They're legendary creatures. I don't know why some creatures have legendary resistance and some don't. No one can explain this to me. They can't be paralyzed. That's good to know. But still. So I give them, anytime we have a legendary creature, I give them legendary resistance. So they faced, I reskinned the Larva Mage into a Chained God Scion. So instead of all the wormy attacks that you have here, Plague of Worms and Feed and Return to Worms and all this stuff, I had it all based on crazy spiked chains. I really channeled my inner Hellraiser and, threw that into it. And boy, it was a tough fight. So it was the Larva Mage and a pair of Starspawn Hulks, which are also pretty tough. The Starspawn creatures are pretty powerful overall. They're pretty high CR and pretty powerful. The Starspawn Hulk has a funny bug in it. It has this thing called Psychic Mirror. If the Hulk takes psychic damage, each creature within 10 feet of the Hulk takes that damage instead. The Hulk takes none of the damage. In addition, the Hulk's thoughts and locations can't be determined, which means if you put two Hulks next to each other and hit them with psychic damage, they will start pinging off of each other, multiplying their psychic damage back and forth over and over and over and over again, turning into like 2 bricks of uranium. So it's kind of a funny little bug. I think the end result is that it's not supposed to be able to chain off of one another, or if it does, it only chains once. but it's kind of a funny bug. So they fought a pair of star spawn Hulks, which are challenge rating 10 each, which I think is a little low. These are creatures from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. And my general assessment of Tome of Foes is that the CRs on them are not high enough. They're not low enough. So these guys are more like an 8. You could probably subtract a couple of CR from a lot of the high-end ones and be okay. Like, these guys hit hard, right? Like, they do slam attacks, and if they hit twice, they do 9. So that would be 14. That's 28 plus 9 is 37 points of damage on a pair of attacks on the assumption that they hit, plus the Psychic Mirror. And 37 damage, though, but, like, you know, I think if we look at, like, a Fire Giant, right? When you think about the actual, like, yeah, they got some crazy stuff that they do. But you look at your Fire Giant, right? And the Fire Giant is CR9, one challenge rating below that. And it does 2 attacks plus 11 each, 28 damage a hit. What is that? 28? I can't even do math. So 56? 56 damage, right? In a round for a single. And they're in an AC 18 and higher hit points, right? Than these guys. So I really don't think 14, right? Like, not even close. It feels like an infinite damage bug. So, yeah, I really think that these guys are under CR'd. I bet the Hulk is a Frost Giant. Frost Giants are, they do 50 damage a hit, 50 damage. And they're CR8, right? And about the same hit points. So these guys, like, and they can throw rocks. So, yeah, this is one where, like, I think the general, like, the way challenge rating is set up is that you sort of add in all of the other things. So damage resistance matters, condition immunities matters, the Psychic Mirror matters, a lot of the weird Reaping Arms matters. All this stuff gets added into their challenge rating, but it really doesn't affect the CR that much, right? So it ends up that, in a practical matter, these Hulks are not that bad. To me, like, the thing that really determines challenge rating is, like, hit points and damage, and everything else. Armor class can, to a point. There are other things that certainly can have an effect. But generally speaking, hit points and damage output are the things that are really going to determine CR. I wonder if there's, like, a way to reverse engineer CR from just looking at the damage output of a creature. So if you assume that this one does 36 points of damage, how do you reverse engineer that into, what general challenge rating it's actually going to do? So anyway, yeah, so they fought these guys. They killed them. And then they had a choice, and they look around, and they're surrounded by these weird Grues, these creatures that are native to Tharizdun's realm. And they realize, like, well, we can't go back up. And they're like, we have to destroy both monoliths. And they're like, but will the portal close? And I'm like, I'm not going to make it easy on them. They're going to have to figure this out, right? I'm not going to, like, oh, yeah, no, there's a perfect way to do it. So they made a choice, and the choice was split the party. So they split the party, and let's jump over to our characters here. My notes. I am in my notes. Cool. So Corvel, the human fighter with the Tharizdun, right? He said, "I'm going to go to the monolith up above," and everyone else said, "We're all going into the rift." I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought I thought Bless was going to, because her sword is telling her our battle is in that realm. We're going down there, right? And so she's like, well, I'm definitely going. My sword says I'm going, so I'm going, And she's like, and if this is the end of Bless, this is the end of Bless. This is the last time she ever sees the mortal world, and so be it. Her, she was going to be dead anyway. She threw herself off a cliff and was saved. This is what she was saved for, which I think is awesome, right? That's like an awesome arc for her. I think she might still stick around in that realm. I think her sword is going to tell her, our life is here, not back there. Someone's got to stay, I think, might be the hard choice. Somebody can destroy the monolith, but when it is destroyed, the rift is going to close, and someone needs to stay to destroy it, and the rift will close behind them, and they will be on the other world. And I think that's pretty awesome. And I think she might think that that's pretty awesome. She seemed to, Juliet, the player, seemed to think that was a pretty awesome arc. So I think we're going to go with that. Is my volume real low, or is it working out? I can't tell. I'm going to turn my gain up a little bit. Test. There we go. I think my volume now got turned down. So now it's test. There we go. So so I think she might stay. And then the rest of the group is down there. And meanwhile, Corvell by himself is going up to the other monolith. And I think he's going to... So I have ideas about where we're going to start. But he went up there by himself, and his plan is to destroy the monolith himself. So, that's going to be pretty interesting. And that's where the strong start comes in. So when we look at our final campaign checklist and what remains, they already faced off against the Black Death. So it's just destroy the monolith and seal the rift is all that's left. And any loose ends... the loose ends are all about what happened in Saltmarsh. And if you recall from from last week's discussion, we talked about all the different things that could happen in the politics of Saltmarsh. I think that is all going to happen in our end narrative of the session rather than actually taking place. So I'm going to do like 1 year later, what's happened, and see where we go. They might go back to Saltmarsh and Zolek might be gone. He might have gone into the Tomb of Horrors and disappeared. I think that might be an interesting exit for Zolek. So we'll see. So strong start is going to be roll for initiative. Now, so let's see. There's two things that happen to strong start. So the characters who went through the rift, they start getting burned by acid because the water on the other side is very acidic. And the those that are inside of the apparatus are okay. And it won't be much. I think it'll be like 2d6 acid damage or something, right? They arrive at the island on the other side. That island is covered in black obsidian bones and a mountain of their island is covered in white bones with a black obsidian monolith in the center of it. And the opposite monolith. In the sky, they see 4 scions of Tharizdun. And they see Tharizdun themselves. Madness check. Because if ever there's an opportunity to go mad, it's when you witness Tharizdun itself. Black obsidian bones seems like a good improvised weapon. Yeah. I think, it was white bone and then like black obsidian bones will be surrounding the monolith itself. It's almost like the inverse of what was on the other side. Meanwhile, and the island is covered in grues and manglers. So that's their fight, grues and manglers. And meanwhile, Corvell is comes to the other island. And there, standing around the monolith, are 50 pirates. They walk through the water, they're all covered, and Sergal is there. And challenges Corvell to a duel. And then we roll for initiative. So that's our start, right? So what, one way to split the party, I've now done this a couple of times and it works pretty well, is that, let's see, He's Not Your Problem says, Tharizdun Island should be covered in eerily abyssal chains which bleed demon ichor. That's not bad. I think they will see that in the distance. I think that when they witness Tharizdun is going to be the chained god. He is this huge hulking form on the horizon that stands taller than the mountains. And he's got an iron, a cold iron mask that's covering his face and chains that are kind of pulling it off into the distance and chains that are tearing into his flesh that are drawn out of the water around him. and he's struggling against these chains, and his blood is pouring out, and he's got a crack in the mask which has one eye that peers out, and that's what drives him mad. It's also what allows his blood to form into these grus and manglers and other such creatures. They're all manifested from his shredded body, and they're all over the place. And he has these scions, which are like, they were angels that were there. Oh, this is some secrets right here. All right, let's get some secrets. Get our secrets going. The scions of Tharizdun were once angels sent to guard him, but they what happened? They got corrupted when his mask cracked. So they were turned over by them. The Tharizdun's blood forms into grus and manglers. Tharizdun's corruption of mortals turns them into chain god seers, of powerful mortals. So if you're like a mage or above, you can be converted into a chain god seer. And those are sort of native beings of Tharizdun. Those are not just, the seers are actually mortals that were turned, and the scions are angels that were turned. Manglers and grus are native to him. They're like, if you recall, if you read the Elven section of Mordenkainen's, my microphone thing is fine. If you read the Elven section of Mordenkainen's, it talks about how the Seldarine, was it? The first Elven god was cut, I think, by Loth, and the blood that flowed from them became elves or Eladrin or something like that. I'd have to go back and check, but it's essentially like that's where the elves came from, was the dripping blood of a wounded elven god. This is the same, only in reverse, that Tharizdun's torn body from the chains that hold him into this world, this abyssal world, his blood forms into these twisted horrors, these grus and manglers and whatnot. So here they're going to see all that stuff. I don't know if I have any other secrets at the time. So scenes, Karelin Litharon says treatment Joe. That's right. Yeah, that Karelin formed. Karelin was the original elven god, I think it was like the original elven god, and then other gods were there, including Loth. And I think Loth tried to stab him, and when she stabbed him, the blood flowed from him. He became mortal elves or something like that. So Austin, you told me how to pronounce your name last time and I forgot. So help me again with pronouncing your name. How will you run 2 fights simultaneously with your players? Do you make them leave the room, or everyone sits and waits, or what? Very good question. And I have a technique, and that is everyone rolls initiative, regardless of where you are in the universe. So even though they're in totally different parts of the multiverse, you still roll initiative and you still go on your turn. Only when it's your turn, we switch to you and we go back to your place. So I've done this. I had to do this in another... Yes, I did this a few weeks ago, also in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, where half the characters were trying to rid themselves of the corruption of Sogoth, while the other half of the characters were fighting in Manistrad Copperlox's bar. And they separated the party, but they didn't know that things were going to go bad. And I just made sure that both sides had a battle, right? And as long as both sides are in combat, you can have everybody... Austin Nadas. Thank you. Austin Nats. So, you roll for initiative. You have everybody roll for initiative, and you go around the table. And when it's their turn, Corvel will roll his initiative, and when it's his turn, we will go up to the other world and talk about his fight on the Isle. And he might have sort of a 3-part fight, like maybe, a bunch of like skeletons will charge into him, and he'll sweep through those, and then a couple of more powerful guys will come after him, and then he'll have to fight Sea Prince Sergal himself, and that'll be fun. So while he's fighting those guys up above, then when it's the other people's turn, we jump back below again. So I think we will be able to run both battles simultaneously. And my hope, and this is going to be tricky, is that all of the hard decisions about who does what and the smashing of the monoliths and the fighting of the people on the isles, that will coordinate well. So it does not bother me. That you will have both sides fighting simultaneously, and that the final decisions will happen at roughly the same time. So I think it would be very cool if both monoliths were destroyed at the same time, so that the timing works right. And we basically have this, split scene, almost like a movie, where all of the tension exists at the same level, but in two totally different places. It's going to be tricky because, you got 6 players doing their stuff, and 5 are on one side and 1's on the other. So, we're going to have to see how that plays out. But I'm kind of hoping that that's how it's going to work out. That's a good question. How do you do it? And I think the answer is if you have a split party, if you can somehow get both into combat at the same time, if both are involved in the same kind of scene that has roughly the same pace. So if both are role-playing, if both are exploring, or if both are in combat, you can go back and forth. And even if you're doing role-playing and exploring, you can still roll for initiative and then go around the table in an initiative order just to make sure that you give people enough screen time, because you might get interested in one scene and then forget about the other scene that's going on. And you want to make sure to constantly go back to the other people who are not currently in the scene. So in this case, we have 2 split scenes. We have the showdown. The showdown with Sea Prince Sergal. And we have the monolith. And then, then they're going to finish Escape. And I guess we'll see. I think at that point we might go to the montage, right? The ending 1 year later. I love doing that. So that's one of my favorite things to do at the end of the campaign. And sometimes the most interesting things in the campaign happen in this extra section, where after the campaign is over, that you're moving on to something else. You do 1 year later, like what happens 1 year later, right? And where are they? And like, if you look at the game that I ran with Enrique, where we did it 1-on-1, he went to Shadowdale, right? Like they took off from the Sword Coast and they headed inland, and he ended up in the Moonsea region and ended up in the Dalelands. Austin says, I like the idea of players having no idea on what's happening in the separate areas, but it's also really cool to see what's happening in the other area. Yeah, this is a general philosophy thing, and I definitely lean towards revealing too much, and in almost all regards. I think that showing our cards, I think it makes the game more interesting. I think that players will grab onto things and run with it, and that gives you more hooks yourself to kind of change and evolve the game. So if we hold things back, sometimes players just say things offhand that really end up being very cool directions to go. And they can't do that if they're separated and not seeing the other side. I mean, you could. So there's definitely a lot of ways to do this. And I think having like off table scenes where if like a character says, I really want to do this whole big scene, but I don't want to bore the hell out of the other players. You say, we're just going to do it separately, right? We'll do it in email or we'll do it on Discord. That there's other ways to do it. But then I think it's also kind of cool that I don't mind the players knowing things. If your players are good about metagaming, i.e. they don't metagame that much. They don't use information that the player knows that the characters don't to affect the choices of the character. That's kind of the definition of metagaming, I think. If your players are pretty good about not doing that, then revealing too much is fine. So I tell them the DCs of checks. I tell them the AC of monsters. I will share scenes that happen outside of the perspective of their characters, which sometimes throws them off. So an example was the players learned that a character they thought was hunting vampires in Saltmarsh was actually a vampire herself. And the players learned it, but the characters didn't know that. It was revealed to the characters later, which kind of helped to draw this together. But the players are having a hard time of like, what am I supposed to do with the fact that I know that she's a vampire and my characters don't, right? And you're like, that's kind of the fun. So I still lean towards that idea of revealing too much. So yeah. And then in this case, I think there's certainly no secret Like, so one thing is, well, could they coordinate their activities, right? Could Corvel up above realize that down below they're getting ready to smash the monolith and he needs to smash it too? It's possible, right? But so what, right? Like, the fates sometimes, he might just know them well enough that he knows that things are going on, or he can feel it. There's a million like ways to argue for why that takes place. So I don't think it's particularly a problem. So yeah. So I don't have a lot of scenes. It's like we're going right into this final battle, and then we're going to jump to 1 year later. Secrets and clues. So I don't have a lot. And is there any really, like, if we look at this area, is there any more Tharizdun stuff? So I think we know that was trapped. Oh, I got a secret. Tharizdun was trapped and imprisoned, right? I had a really good secret that just came up. Tharizdun was imprisoned in this abyssal demiplane by the elder gods. Here's the real bad secret. Tharizdun, cold iron mask, which is like the size of a mountain, right? Was cracked and led to his influence bleeding into the world. It was, here's the big reveal. It was Sunspire's blade that cracked the mask. She believed she could kill the chained god. Thus, Sunspire is Bless's intelligent sword that is now, so Sunspire was an angel and then died, and her soul was put inside of this sunblade called the Sunspire. And the Sunspire became a very powerful anti-artifact of the cult of Tharizdun and was put in the well and dragged out of the well. And it turns out that Sunspire is what cracked the mask, is actually responsible for the whole rift between worlds. So Bless's sword is personally responsible for all of the chaos that's happened on the shore. How cool is that? Like, I think that's a great reveal. I think that's going to be a real fun one. The Suns, and it still hasn't given up. Even though it did that, it's like we can still beat him. So that's a cool. I think that's a really cool secret. Are there any other secrets? Right. And so this is what I think is fun. Like I could have thought of that like months ago, but I didn't. And I just sort of let the ethereal parts of the story stay ethereal until it's time to bring them in. And I think that's why secrets and clues are such a powerful prep tool, is because you only focus on the things that your characters could learn in the next session. And you sort of let the far out stuff be the far out stuff. You hang on loose with all this. Like, we're not writing a novel. We don't have to have the crazy FBI thread, markers all over our wall of conspiracy theories. That, we're just worried about, this is such to me, this is such an important piece. We're worried about our next game. I've got a game in an hour and a half, and I'm going to have 6 people sitting at the table, and I'm running the end of my campaign, and I want it to be good. I'm not worried about next week. I'm not worried about Wednesday, right? I'm not worried about what the end of my Eberron campaign is going to be like. Somebody asked what's next, and I said, next is Eberron. So we'll talk a little bit about here, but next week on this show, we will be discussing session 0 of a homebrew Eberron campaign. And if we have time today, I'll give a little sneak preview. But I think that DM, I'm going to make some statements that I can't defend. But I think that a lot of DMs think too big about their game. And I think that we try to think far out of like, what is the outline going to be and what decisions are going to be made and what are the big beats. And we outline it out like a story. And it turns out that even when authors write books, the better books aren't done that way. The better books evolve over time. You don't know where they're necessarily going to go. And then you write them and you go back and you edit them and you get them nice and clean and tight. And so they work really well. But you don't start out by saying like, here's the beginning, middle, and end. Many authors do. And that's fine. But I know that like, Stephen King doesn't, my favorite author. So, not to say one is right or wrong, but I think we choose one that we like. And I think that's one I like. So, so as DMs, I think we kind of hang on to our campaigns a little too tightly when, much like our prep for an adventure, we only want to prep what we need to feel comfortable, right? You don't need to prep the whole thing. You don't want to go in a nervous wreck. You want to go in feeling confident enough. That's why in this show, a lot of times at the end, I'll say, so how do I feel? Like, do I feel like I've got what I need, right? And if I feel like I've got what I need, then I'm all set. And that's all I need. And I think the same is true with the campaign. Like, I want to know what the heavy arc is. And I want to know, like, do I have enough locations to run some good locations? And I'll write the locations down. Do I have my 3 interesting villains that could act, that can help work in this? And so I write them down too. And, but yeah, hang on loose. And I expect that like the campaign's going to go in wild directions. I got 6 other brains are going to be twisting this thing in a different direction. Why pretend that I have any idea where it's going to go? So, I want to have enough that I feel like I won't be a nervous wreck worrying about my campaign, but I don't need so much. I don't need to make it too tight. So, what's my point without that? Oh, my point was that like, I never thought about the fact that the Sunspire is responsible for the crack in Tharizdun's helm. Tharizdun. So that's cool, right? And now it's like, well, it's tight because I knew he had a crack in his helm, and I knew that was what caused his essence to bleed out, and that's what caused like his powers bleeding into the world, and that's why we have cults of Tharizdun, and that's why we have all this other stuff. So now I know why, and it's because of the weapon that one of the characters is holding, right? What's the odds? Well, the odds are 1 in 1, but it's still pretty cool. So, so I think that's where the lighter prep style, this like focusing on secrets and clues, focusing on the things that the characters can learn in the next game, is such a powerful tool because the game can evolve and ideas can come to you later, and you can see how the players are acting in certain situations and say like, how can I use that? There's this concept, I've seen it on Reddit, or I think it originated with Reddit, called like it's called knife theory. I think if you Google like D&D knife theory, and the theory there is that like players bring things to their character, vulnerabilities to their character that you can then use to up the drama of the game, right? And they call it like handing the DM a knife, right? And, you do, sometimes this is a funny thing where somebody will do something kind of goofy and you'll sort of play off of that and kind of, put him in a disadvantageous position. And as long as you kind of boost it the other direction, as long as it's fun to the game, that it works really well. But there are also ways to kind of bring drama to the game that the players bring. And you want to be able to tug on that drama, right? The black whale, right? So I had one of my players said, I want to have my parents eaten by a whale. And we grabbed that. And now the whale became the freaking avatar of Tharizdun, right? So it's like, that's a knife, right? When you take somebody's backstory and you turn it into the main villain of the campaign, or probably the 3rd main villain of the campaign, it's a big knife. It's a great big black whale warlock spellcasting knife. So that idea works really well. And you want to be flexible to be able to bring that stuff in. If your story is too tight, then you're not going to have room to add that stuff when it pops up. So I'm sorry for my rant. Do I have 2 other secrets and clues? I don't know. We'll hang on to those. Man, I got no NPCs. I'm not going to worry about the NPCs in this one. Because they're all dead. So we're not going to worry about NPCs. There's no NPCs that I'm going to pay any attention to. It's not like there's a lost soul out in the other world. I don't think. I already did one of those, right? They already had the other one. So then, fantastic locations. So I don't need the caves anymore. And it looks like I've already got, so the Endless Nadir, I'll keep this stuff in here just because it's handy. And, we have the Isle Above, right? And it's got Ancient Bone Hill, huge black monolith. Setting red sun. That's the up above. And Endless Nadir doesn't matter too much because they already are going through the rift. So I'm not going to worry. I think I'm going to delete these and go to the other side. Black acidic seas, geometric floating shapes in the air, island of bones, right? Alien bones. Bones from creatures that never appeared in the world before. Second monolith. Tharizdun. So that's pretty good. So monsters, we have skeletons. We're gonna have zombie hulks. Would be fun for him to fight. What zombie hulks like? Let's take a look. So I'm looking for fun undead creatures that a single fighter can face. And I think a zombie. Oh, come on, zombie hulk. All right, they're not. They're what are they? Zombie ogre, right? Ogre zombie. So ogre zombies. Yeah, these are fun, right? Ogre zombies are great. And maybe we'll have an assassin. A drowned assassin. And then we'll have the drowned master. I think the drowned master might be a little hard, though. Is he legendary? He's not legendary. But his great sword... Okay, he makes one great sword attack. And he does 24 damage. So we're going to cheat a little bit. Let's go to characters. My characters. And we're going to go to... These aren't mine. These are my characters. I don't need that. Let's go to my campaigns. And we have Sunday D&D campaign. And we go to Corvel. You like Corvel's icon? Yeah. So main things. How many hit points does he have? 71 hit points. So that's not a lot of hit points. So I think we're going to reduce. He does a tremendous amount of damage. And his AC is 18. So his AC is not bad. So we're going to play it out. But I think generally speaking, we're going to reduce this cold to 7. So he'll do about 17 damage with a greatsword and then 10 life-draining damage with his life-draining tentacle. I think that, that will work. That will work better. He's CR9. I don't know if he's a CR9. And Corvel dishes out damage, so 157 damage won't be so bad. So I think, I don't know, maybe the zombie... I think we'll have one ogre zombie and one drowned assassin together. Might be kind of interesting. So we'll see how that goes. And we can always drop their hit points to nothing. And how many skeletons do we want to have? About 12 skeletons. It gets attacked by 12 skeletons. If you have, let's go to the encounter builder. My encounters. Create new. And we'll have manage characters, and we'll say 1 level 8. Bang. Is that right? No, I don't want that. How do you remove a character? That didn't work like I wanted. Manage characters. 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 level 8. Okay. So I got 1 level 8 character. And then we have ogre zombie. And we add that. So I can have 2 ogre zombies. If I do an ogre zombie and a drowned assassin, that is deadly. But I don't think it's really that deadly. I don't think it's that bad. if I use, how many skeletons is what I really want to do. So let's get rid of all these guys. And how many skeletons can a single level 8 so 10 is hard. So we'll go with 10. We'll go with 10 skeletons. All right, and they're not going to hit him. Like what they have to, again, a quarter of them will hit. You know, if 10 of them attack, only a couple of them are actually going to hit him. Please pet the cat. All right, I'll pet the cat. Hello, kitty. Yes, there you go. Ah, why? Why with the clawing? Look at the claw. Ah. This is why I don't pet the cat. There you go. That's a good kitty. That's good. She likes to claw. He's going to be sliced by 2.5 rusty blades. I'm so sorry. I knew what I was getting into when I did that. Don't worry. My hand's already shredded up. You're such a good kitty. Yes, you are. This is Maliki. And she's like, I'm going to claw you so hard. So that'll be fun up top. So these are up top monsters. Monsters up top. And then we have monsters below. And we're going to have how many Grues? So again, we can sort of, you know, we have a ton of Grues. So this time we'll change manage characters. And we will have 5 level 8s. And this time we're going to Grue. So Grues and Hulks. Let's see, we get rid of our skeletons. And Manglers, I mean. So let's do 4 Manglers. And yeah, so I'm already like way above. How is that? Are Manglers that bad? CR5s, they're not that bad. We're going to do 4 Manglers. And like 20 Grues. There we go. Deadly is 10,500 and I'm doing 32,000 there. But remember, they don't have to cats. What are you doing? You're screwing up my thing. They don't have to kill them all. So I think we'll have like 25 Grues and 4 Manglers. How many is that per character? Is that 5 Grues per character? That's probably about right. That's a good amount. 2 a.m. Yeah, go to bed. Don't forget about daylight saving time if you have that wherever it is in 2 a.m. So I think that's a nice set. And I could just hurl more Grues. Like how many possible Grues? 2 waves at 25 each. And then 2, this is where they will all die. 2 Chained God Scions, which are Star Spawn Larva Mages. You don't want to face those guys. I'm going to turn them into Star Spawn Seers. So they probably won't know. But Star Spawn Seers, like running multiple Larva Mages. So they're going to look like the other Larva Mage they fought. But the Seers are not legendary, which is nice. Yeah, players better seal that rift. That is correct. But they have all this like psychic orbs and stuff, so they can hurl damage out. And I'm just going to make them fly. So I'm going to use this exact same stat block, only they can fly. And yeah, these guys they're rounds away. Like they're not going to show up right away. They're going to start with the Grues. This is going to be, I think we're going to do the same sort of phases up top and down below. So they'll face a bunch of Grues. Maybe 30 Grues. 30 times, I think it's 30 divided by 5 is 6. So 6 Grues each. How bad are Grues? And I'm going to, when I'm running like a swarm of Grues, when I'm running a swarm of, they're only CR 1/4, 17 hit points. I'll round that to 15 to make my life easy. And I'm just going to do their confounding bite. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to worry too much about their all the other special attacks. We're going to round that up. But they'll do 6 damage on a hit. They're only +3 to hit. So again, they're going to about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of them will hit. So not bad. Then the Manglers show up. The Manglers are pretty badass. It's really a bummer that they don't have the art for these guys. And they didn't get the art. I'm sure there's a story about why they didn't get the art. Hello, kitty. This is Maliki, and she's needy. Are you needy, kitty? You're not normally this needy. 71 hit points, CR5, 2 claw attacks, 8 damage, and if the attack roll has advantage, the target also takes 7 psychic damage. What's really killer... Oh, and I think the Grooves might help with this, right? Flurry of Claws. 6 claw attacks against one target, either before or after the attack. They can move up to a speed as a bonus action without provoking opportunity attacks. So it can zip around. But 6 attacks, and if it happens to do psychic damage on those attacks, that's 15 damage per attack. So that's where it gets really nasty. So he's not your problem, says Morning Canaan's Tome of Foes would benefit a lot more from monster art than Bestiary, yes. Anyway, so I think that's set. I don't have to worry about... Come on, kitty. Come on. So I don't have to worry about any of that. That's all good. There's no more treasure because we're at the end of the session. And that's it, right? So I think we're set. I feel confident. I'm ready to run this, I think. Yeah. I don't have any more secrets. Nothing else came up, so we'll just go with the 8 because it is the end of the session. One secret might be that I don't know if I'm going to do this or not. Zolek went into the tomb and disappeared. And the whole area collapsed. That could be fun. Do you imagine player death in today's session? Morning. I don't know. We're going to find out. And what happens if somebody dies? I don't know. So good question. And we'll see. Like, it can happen. It's going to be pretty rough. We'll find out. Hello, kitty. Hello. Leaky likes to be on camera today. She's like, I want to be on camera. I'm so cute. I'm purring. So next week is going to be session 0. Let me give a sneak preview, 5-minute preview of next session's game. So I put together, let's see if I can find it here. It's over here. That's Regnum Radis. That's not what I'm talking about. I think I put it on, let me go to my Twitter page. Here we go. So my campaign for Eberron is going to be called The Second Morning. And this is my one-pager for the second morning. I like to hand out like a one-page campaign summary, like a campaign guide that kind of helps the players understand what we're getting into. And the Eberron book is a really good book for players. Like, half of the book is written so that players can read it. So I kind of reinforce that here. So the campaign arc is that, and I can spoil it here. The characters their goal is to find out what caused the morning. So if you are familiar with your Eberron lore, Eberron is a whole different world than all these other worlds. So like, if you think about it, I ran in the Forgotten Realms for a while, and now I've run about a year in Saltmarsh, which is in Greyhawk. And now I'm running in Eberron. So I'm doing 3 different worlds. So all the people are like, they do too much Forgotten Realms. There's plenty. I just did 3. Or I'm doing 3. So Eberron is a high magic... I'm going to try to give a quick Eberron summary for those who aren't familiar with Eberron. Eberron is a high magic world where the technology of magic has changed the world around it. So people can communicate long distances because they have sending spells, and they have airships that are powered by elementals, and they have lightning rails that are powered by arcane lightning. They have cities like Sharn. Sharn is this huge city that's made up of towers that stretch far up to the sky, far higher than they would normally because gravity is slightly different. So the technology of magic has steered the world. That's probably one big thing. The other one is that they just recently finished a huge war among these major empires. And the results of the war... Oh, sorry. I don't have it on my screen. Everybody wants to see it. Everyone's like, where is it? There you go. So, they had a huge war called the Last War, and think of it like World War II, right? And in fact, a lot of the stuff that's in Eberron kind of comes from real world stuff and also from popular fiction. So, and we're going to capitalize on that heavily when we're running this. It's if you imagine World War II and imagine World War II, only like an entire continent got nuked instead of a couple of cities. Not to downplay 2 cities getting nuked, the only time it's ever happened. But yeah, in this one, like an entire huge section of the world has turned into this horrible wasteland called what is it called? That's not called the Morning. Is it called the Morning? What's the name of the place? Not Sire. What's it called? That's like the Wastelands or something like that. Oh, the Mournland. Duh, it's right there. It's right there on my sheet. So, something caused it and nobody knows what. And the book doesn't even describe what. It wants you to kind of choose. So I thought, well, that's really cool. And that to me is a real kind of heart of like what Eberron is about. So I said, why don't I run a campaign based on that? So the campaign is going to be, and if you want the theme of the campaign, it's going to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the characters are trying to find out what caused the Mourning, what destroyed Sire and created the Mournland, and make sure it doesn't get into the hands, whatever it is, make sure it doesn't get into the hands of bad people. So of course you can imagine that your fronts are your bad people. 3 different groups that are also trying to go after this thing. And I think like the Dragon Heist, like, stupid villain that you see all the time that you just, the minute they show up, you fight them. Kind of the cunning villain who are bad guys, but they're smart. And then the like half and half villain where you're like, I don't trust these people. And sometimes we fight, but a lot of times we end up working together. Like that to me is kind of cool. I should put up some art from Eberron because it's pretty great. Let's bring up that cover art. So there's some cool Eberron-y cover art. Is there like a cool piece of Sharn? Look at that. There you go. So half of the adventure is going to take place in the city of Sharn. It's going to be a fair bit of like, there you go. There's like a cool picture of Sharn, right? Yeah, so the noir Indiana Jones Maltese Falcon style, where like there's going to be, I want to take like, there's a great Alfred Hitchcock movie called Notorious, which is all about hunting down Nazis after the war. It's really cool, and I want to sort of grab ideas. So imagine like hunting down the people that were involved in, in the creation of the Mournland, and finding out like who knows. Somebody knows, right? It's not possible that no one knows what caused the Mourning. Somebody knows. We need to find out who. Right. And I'm not even, you talk about leaving blanks. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. Right. And I don't plan on knowing for a long time. I don't want to even ask myself, like, what could it be? I mean, like in my head, I'm like, oh, it could be these things. I'm like, nope, stop thinking about that. Worry about the next game. So, anyway, so I put together this 1-page sheet. I chose 5 factions that I thought might be fun to run for group factions. I talked about the characters in the world and the importance that you seek to travel with your fellow band of adventurers to prevent the second Mourning, right? Everyone's worried that another Mourning is going to come. Like imagine if whatever caused Sire to get destroyed like that happened in Breland or happened around, happened at Sharn, untold millions and millions of people would die, and your job is to stop it. So it's a nice campaign. I think it's going to be a tier 1 and 2 campaign. I don't think I plan on taking it to tier 3 and 4, but I might, it's possible if we're really having a good time. I wouldn't mind going to a 20th level campaign. So we'll see. And I don't know how long these things are going to go, but they're homebrew adventures. So everything that I'm doing, I'm going to probably use the adventure that's in the book as my first adventure. But I plan on homebrewing everything else after that. And so one of the other things I want to do is I've never really put any house rules in place. I never really tried any house rules. So I'm going to try a few, and I'm testing them out with my players now to see which ones we like. I've already had a couple that I got rid of, and I had a couple that have changed. So I'm still toying with which house rules I want to put into play. And I mainly just want to try one. So like one house rule example that I'm going to put in play, and I'm pretty sure that this one's going to stick, is whenever you pick a race that has attribute bumps, you can apply those attribute bumps to any attribute you want, as long as they're not the same one. So if you have a character that's got +2 wisdom, +1 dexterity, you can instead apply the +2 strength, +1 con. If you prefer, if you want to play a meteor character. That way you can have like the really strong elf, or you could have the really smart half orc. You know, you don't have to pick the race that fits your class. You can really pick any race that fits your theme. I really want people to pick races because of the themes, not because of the mechanics. And that's something I want to try here. That's a new sort of popular thing that people actually wish you could do in D&D in general. And so I want to try it out and see how that works. And I have a couple other house rules. Critical hit, handling critical hits is another house rule that I'm toying with. And I can't decide between, there's two that are popular. I ran a poll on this, and there are two that are popular, and then one that I tend to prefer. So I think I'm going to go with the one I prefer. The two popular ones are double all damage. So when you roll your critical hit, instead of just doubling your damage dice, you just double everything. So that way it's really easy. It's really quick. You roll, if you're 1d8 + 5 and you roll a 6, it's 12, right? Really easy to do in your head. And it scales nicely. It's more powerful than the critical hit in the native critical hit, but it's more powerful than the native critical hit, but not as bad as the next one. The other one is the brutal critical hit. They call it the Chris Perkins critical hit because I think this is what he did in his games. And I think they said it was in the playtest rules right before the end. And in that one, you take the maximum damage. I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to even say it. When you roll a critical hit, you add the maximum dice damage to whatever your normal damage would have been. I don't know if that's as easy. In other words, if it's 1d8 + 5 is your normal longsword attack, and you roll a critical hit, you add an additional 8 because you add the maximum dice damage to that. So then it would be 1d8 + 13 instead of 1d8 + 5. And the intent there is it's there to ensure that you never roll a critical hit that's lower than you would have rolled otherwise. And by adding the maximum die value, you are ensuring that your crit is higher than a normal attack. My problem with it is it's often way higher than a normal attack. So if you have a paladin, for example, or a rogue who adds a lot of extra dice, and you're adding all the maximum of those dice, you'll have these tremendous hits. And if you put it on monsters, it could be even worse. So because monsters, a lot of the damage of monsters is done in dice because of their size, not because of their attributes and stuff. So a bugbear was an example where they do like 56 damage on a crit at CR1. And it's because they have so many dice that you essentially say, like, I think they're 2d8 + 2d6 + 2 if they hit with a sneak attack, right? Bugbears they're big and they can sneak attack. And if you add 2d8 + 2d6 + 2, and then the maximum of all those dice, that's an additional 30. So that's 2d8 + 2d6 + 32, right? And that's just nuts. So I think that while a lot of people prefer that, like those two are the most popular in a poll, but it's pretty close. I think the doubling damage just is easier. So I think that's where I'm leaning to. But I'm going to talk to both of my groups and see. And they may say, like, you know what, we don't need any of these house rules. And that might be fine, but I'd like to try some out. I have some thoughts about house ruling stuff I want to try. I just want to try it out. Now, game's 6 years old. Let's experiment a little bit. But only if it adds to the fun of the game. Only if it keeps the game fast and fun and easy and adds to the fun for everybody. So I think, anyway, next week, done with Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I'll probably do a quick summary of what happened, and then we will talk about Session 0 of Eberron, the second morning, my new Eberron campaign. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Thanks to those of you who back Sly Flourish on Patreon. Remember, if you back Sly Flourish on Patreon, not only will you be helping the show, but you will be getting a hold of this beautiful, where is it? If I can find it. Oh, God. Oh, problems. That's not the right window either. Oh, my God. Oh, I'm totally screwing this up. You too can get a hold of this fine adventure, Regnum Ratus, The Rats in the Cellar, a adventure exclusive to Patreon backers, and as well as helping the show and keeping all of the trains running on time here at the Sly Flourish Empire. So thank you all very much for coming today, and I will talk to you guys all next week. Have fun and get out there and play a little bit of D&D.